My dad had a very, very successful company with his partners, which, by the way, I think is a good lesson. Intact teams that launch companies scale much further faster. So I literally was on the phone this morning with a longstanding client of ours in India whose father's got a new way of making concrete. They've got a $100 million factory they're opening up next. And they want to talk about, what's the team they put together. And the key is the father's bringing over the team from their other manufacturing operations that they've been in business with for 70 years. And having that intact team, even my partner who runs our global coaching organization, John Ratliff, he sold to a $2 billion company. They then obviously blew up the place, which is a lot of times what acquisitions do with mid-market companies. And John's been able to recruit back almost entire team now to lead our global coaching organization. So I like to think about it like Ocean's 11, or 12 or 27, whatever they end. All you want to do is get the old gang back together and decide which bank you want to rob next. The other thing that we talked about this morning, just since it's fresh, is he's going to need to hire about 70 employees over the next few months to scale up this factory in India. And there, they can't really pull people from their other facilities. And so the key for any of us that are scaling is to find a fishing hole, kind of a strange fishing hole where you can fish for talent. So from the very beginning, when I first launched what was called Gazelles, now Scaling Up, I knew we were going to be running events and all of that. And so my first few hires and subsequent hires have all been out of Marriott headquarters. We launched in Ashburn, Virginia. Marriott's there in the DC area. And in fact, Donna, who today essentially runs my life and my whole speaking organization, is ex-Marriott. Michael Dell drew all kinds of employees he needed to make computers from Kodak in Rochester, New York. He heard they were laying 10,000 people off. And so he went up there, hired a few, brought them to Austin, Texas. Once they had a good time in Austin, better than the weather in Rochester, that became then his consistent referral source. So we really encourage entrepreneurs to keep the team together, especially if they're going to do their second or third venture, and to find a good, strange fishing hole that they can consistently get talent out of. So anyway, my dad was able to do that. They were a group of guys that were ex-engineers at the Titan missile program. They launched a rocket ship of a company, and then they lost it all in the 73 recession. They got in a cash crunch because the customer owed them about $500,000, which was a lot of cash flow in the late 60s. And it really emphasized the importance that you've got to stay on. You can get by with decent people, decent strategy, decent execution, but not a day without cash. And then went on to help build a $12 million company while I was in college, launched the Association of Collegiate Entrepreneurs, then YEO, now EO. And today we're at 283 coaching partners as of this morning, helping companies scale up. So that's kind of the background. And let's dig into what are some of the things I think entrepreneurs should be looking at for 2024 and beyond.
Sure. So you touched on the people, cash, strategy, execution piece. Do you think those four pillars that you mentioned, and you mentioned, you're working with a company in India. I think a few weeks ago you were in Europe working with some other clients. Do you think those four pillars are just consistent across the globe, regardless of which country you're in, which company or industry you're working in? Is it the same four pieces?
Yeah. And that's why, a lot of our competitors like to make stuff up. They want to create their own 6-box framework or this, that, or the other thing. Our people, strategy, execution, and cash came out of both Jim Collins' research as well as IDEO's research. When they really looked at the 100 companies they launched and another 100 they funded, they wanted to see what was more critical: people, strategy, execution, or cash. It's a foundational four that matter no matter where you launch a company. What's different is what is the most critical at this point. One of the things I do with each of the audiences, from Australia to Asia to the Middle East, where I was just recently with EO, to Europe and the US, is figure out right at this moment, where is the constraint? People, strategy, execution, or cash? It varies by region. Some places they've got a real cash challenge. The Middle East, cash was a big one because they don't have access to the bank lines of credit. It's not easy to get those bank loans in that region of the world. And so that was a much more critical leg of the four-legged stool than it was in some regions where it's an absolute challenge to get people, like in Australia. They're just really lacking the talent they need to support their scale-ups. But what I thought was interesting, Raj, is that IDEO asked which of those four mattered most in scaling their successful companies. And what they found was two things. One, all four mattered equally. So it's like a four-legged table. So you've got to get all of them right. But they found a fifth that actually mattered more, and it's market timing. I actually, because I self-publish, when I found that research, I went in and changed and added that to our work. And at the end of the day, the market makes you look smart or makes you look dumb. And one of the questions I often ask my audiences is, do you have a friend who's doing so much better than you, and you know they're dumber than you? I say it tongue in cheek, but it's because they caught the right wave. I mean, right now, there was a company yesterday, something Walk the Runway, that simply added to their quarterly call that they are really moving into AI, and their stock jumped tremendously. My next article I'm writing for Chief Executive Magazine is AI plus A player. That is the winning combination. And so right now, if you're not figuring out how AI is going to play out in your industry, you're going to get killed by somebody in your industry who does. So you've got to ride the wave, and it can make you look smart or dumb.